For more than 100 years, Pasadena Water and Power has served our customers as a community-owned, not-for-profit utility. PWP provides safe, reliable, high-quality water at competitive rates with a resilient system for current and future generations. The Pasadena service area uses about 20 million gallons of water every day, enough to cover the Rose Bowl football field in a foot of water about 60 times. This water comes from diverse sources, like our local groundwater basin. We also deliver water that travels hundreds of miles through various regional systems until it reaches our distribution system, treatment plants, and reservoirs. Part of our system includes the Sunset Reservoirs, Pasadena's largest and oldest reservoirs. Major renovations and upgrades to key infrastructure like this is a reinvestment in Pasadena's future, ensuring that our system will continue to provide safe, reliable water service for another 100 years and beyond. Costs to operate, maintain, and invest in the water system continue to increase. PWP must fully recover expenses to sustain a resilient system. How does this affect you? PWP is proposing to modify how and how much to charge for water services. As a community-owned utility, all revenue is used to reinvest in infrastructure and provide safe and reliable water services to our customers. Currently, water rates are based primarily on the size of the water meter. The proposed new water rate structure also takes into account the type of customer to provide water based on distinctive use: single-family residential, multifamily residential, and commercial. With the proposed new structure, each customer type has 3 pricing tiers of monthly water allocation. It's designed to further encourage conservation. Additionally, we are simplifying the rate structure into 2 components, one fixed and one variable. This helps provide for a resilient financial structure and for customers to control their bill by using less water. The new water rate design is simple, promotes water conservation, and supports the sustainability of our water system. PWP wants to hear from you. Join our public meetings and visit our website to learn more. For more than 100 years, Pasadena Water and Power has served our customers as a community-owned, not-for-profit utility. PWP provides safe, reliable, high-quality water at competitive rates with a resilient system for current and future generations. The Pasadena service area uses about 20 million gallons of water every day, enough to cover the Rose Bowl football field in a foot of water about 60 times. This water comes from diverse sources, like our local groundwater basin. We also deliver water that travels hundreds of miles through various regional systems until it reaches our distribution system, treatment plants, and reservoirs. Part of our system includes the Sunset Reservoir. For more
Good evening, everyone. It is nearly 5 minutes past the hour, and let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to start by introducing myself. My name is Jennifer Guest Mayo, and I oversee the government affairs and customer relations for Pasadena Water and Power. And I'd like to start by thanking everyone for joining us at tonight's community meeting regarding our proposed water rate adjustments and rate design. And to start, I'd like to introduce Pasadena Water and Power Acting General Manager David Reyes, who will start our program with some welcoming remarks.
Good evening, and thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us on this very important topic. This is the first of several community meetings planned on water rates. My name is David Reyes. I'm one of the assistant city managers to the city. I'm currently acting general manager, and I've been so since January of this past year, and look forward to working with the team and community to receive input on the proposed water rates and rate structure. This evening we have expert panelists lined up to answer questions, go over a presentation, and receive your input. And again, I'd like to thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules and look forward to your continued involvement in this process. Thank you. With that, I'll turn it over back to Jen.
Great, thank you, Mr. Reyes. So this evening we will hear about PWP's recommendation to adjusting how and how much we charge for water. Tonight's discussion will detail on why the proposed adjustments are needed and how they may affect you and your neighbors. So PWP's Assistant General Manager of Water, Stacy Takaguchi, and PWP Assistant General Manager of Finance and Administration, Lynn Chamowitz, will lead the presentation, followed by an opportunity to ask questions and to provide feedback and comments. And I'd also like to thank the team members here at Pasadena Water and Power and other city staff who are joining us behind the scenes. And they'll also be available to answer any questions during the Q&A at the end of the session of the presentations. I'd also like to remind folks that this is the first of 3 community meetings that we're having on these proposed water rate adjustments. The next 2 meetings will actually be in person, and they will, of course, be on the same topic. The next meeting is at Wednesday, May 1st at 6:30 at Victory Park Community Center. The second is Thursday, May 23rd at 2 p.m. at Robinson Park Recreation Center. And I think I just referred to that to the second community meeting. That is actually the third and final community meeting before we have the June 3rd public hearing in council chambers on Monday evening. At the beginning of the hour, many of you may have seen the short animated video we played, which highlights much of what we will be discussing tonight. If you missed it, don't worry. We're going to post the link on our website, which is pwpweb.com/water rate design. It's not up there yet, but we will be posting that later this week, as well as a recording of the meeting that we're having here tonight. So pwpweb.com/water rate design. And we'll also be sharing some of this information on our social media channels in the coming days. And also, we recognize that anytime there's a discussion about rates and rate adjustments, a very common and very reasonable question we get asked from local residents and businesses is, how will this impact my utility bill? Well, PWP's IT team developed a bill estimator online tool, which is a simplified version of all the billing inputs. So your actual bill may vary, but the intent here is to provide customers, you, with a general sense of how their budgets might be impacted based on your individual projections of how much water you may be using based on the information here tonight. And that actually will also be on the same, is available now on pwpweb.com/water rate design. So as I briefly mentioned this evening, we'll hear from 2 Pasadena Water and Power Assistant General Managers. First up is Stacy Takaguchi, Assistant General Manager of Water, who came to Pasadena Water and Power in 2022 with more than 20 years of experience in the water industry. Prior to joining PWP, she worked for the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California for 15 years, serving in numerous roles, including overseeing regional drought action planning efforts. Ms. Takaguchi is a licensed engineer and is super passionate about all things water. Our second presenter is the newest member of our executive leadership team, Assistant General Manager Lynn Chamowitz, who joined us in September of last year. She most recently was with the Mojave Water Agency, where she served as the Chief Financial Officer. Prior to becoming CFO, Ms. Chamowitz served as the Public Services Budget and Finance Supervisor for the city of Ann Arbor, Michigan, where she managed a comprehensive rate study and provided leadership in financial modeling, public finance reporting, and capital planning. Additionally, she is a certified public financing officer and has dedicated her career to organizational financial excellence with extensive experience in water utilities. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the presentation over to PWP Assistant General Manager of Water, Stacy Takaguchi. Stacy, it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Jen. And good evening, everyone. And thank you for joining our water rates community meeting today and being engaged. Engagement really is key to our collective successful future as a community. I'm excited, appreciative, and honored to be serving you and for this opportunity to enhance that engagement by sharing a bit about your water and continuing to provide transparency about your water rates. As you can see here, Pasadena Water and Power is guided and driven by our vision and our mission to be a valued community asset, an exceptional employer, a partner in Pasadena's prosperous future, contributing to the quality of life in Pasadena. And what we do is deliver safe and reliable water, providing this essential service to our community with superior customer service at competitive rates. This is really important here. We are a community-owned, not-for-profit utility. That is powerful, allowing us to align with local needs reinvest revenues to improve our system for reliability, and for all of us here to be stewards of our water system and our water future. I'm going to share a quick story. I like to do this about how we came about to be a community-owned utility, because I do think it's a powerful one. Prior to the formation of the water department, the city was provided water by numerous private water companies, which really could not financially reinvest in the system, leading to poor infrastructure and inadequate reliability, and really couldn't meet the needs of this emerging city in the late 1800s. So in 1912, the city of Pasadena purchased 3 private land and water companies, forming the municipal utility, the Pasadena Water Department. Pasadena is also one of the major visionary drivers in the formation of the Metropolitan Water District, a wholesale water provider established in 1928. And today, PWP serves 160,000 to about 170,000 people, with a service area a bit larger than the city boundaries. And our annual demand is under 30,000 acre feet, with last year being only about 22,000 acre feet, which is a great conservation result there, which is about 9.8 million HCF or 100 cubic feet, and 1 HCF or 100 cubic feet equates to 1 billing unit. Now, these pie diagrams shows our makeup of our water users, and we have local groundwater, which makes up about 1/3 of our portfolio, with the remaining need met by imported or purchased water via the Metropolitan Water District. So where does our water come from? We have a diversified water portfolio for enhanced reliability. Similar to a financial portfolio, the more diversified, the more reliable. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. And we are here in Pasadena, and we're part of a regional water system working with multiple partners locally, regionally, statewide, and federally. And as a member of the Metropolitan Water District, we receive water all the way from the Colorado River via a system of reservoirs and Metropolitan's Colorado River Aqueduct. Metropolitan's also a contractor on the State Water Project originating in Northern California. So you can imagine the systems and partnerships needed to get water from more flood-prone areas here to the semi-arid environment in Southern California. And here locally, we are blessed with groundwater resources, which is like natural underground storage tank filled with sand and water. And our groundwater basin is called the Raymond Basin, which is replenished primarily by what falls from the sky and percolates in the ground. So mostly mountain runoff or local stream water via our spreading basins that they're shown here. And some of these photos also show that, as you know, particularly felt over the last few years, we experienced extreme and variable weather, feast and famine. This diversified portfolio in multiple hydrologic regions allows us to better weather these extremes for climate adaptation and enhanced reliability. And speaking of climate adaptation, that includes capturing water when it is available, like in the very wet 2023, recharging our groundwater basin, which again is that wonderful resource beneath our very feet, or I guess chair if you're sitting, and for increased reliability in times of need, like prolonged drought that we just saw in 2020 to 2022. And last year, and then I'd like to show this graphic, we actively captured and recharged 4.7 billion gallons of water at our spreading grounds, and partnered with Metropolitan and our fellow groundwater agencies on innovative programs for over 800 million gallons of additional groundwater augmentation. And a quick shout out here to our Pasadena resident, Ert Barker, who took this beautiful photo you see here on the left of one of our spreading basins up in the Arroyo. And from those sources, we have an extensive network of infrastructure, as you can see here, and operations to deliver to your homes and businesses. So when you turn on that faucet, clean water comes out. We have about 38,000 service connections, hundreds of miles of pipes, groundwater wells, reservoirs, treatment plants, pumping stations, and much, much more. And those who work with me hear me say continuously, water quality is of the utmost importance. So when you turn on that faucet, you get safe, high quality water that meets or surpasses all regulatory standards today and into the future, including new regulations. You've probably seen this on the news, like PFAS, or forever chemicals. And we track and monitor to identify whether we have them, which we don't, by the way, in our treated water system. And we make sure that we are prepared for future scenarios, including with treatment facilities, as you can see here in the middle. And also, as shown in that bottom middle photo, we continue to bring new critical resources online. And I like that photo. It's a great photo capturing the ribbon cutting ceremony for the Wadsworth groundwater treatment facility. And let me tell you, those oversized scissors are legit. And we pride ourselves on being one of the few water utilities that has our own certified, accredited water quality laboratory, performing rigorous testing, over 5,000 analyses per month. And it's also critically important to continually inform our customers for full transparency of your water quality. We have our consumer confidence report and our website. And here you can see we don't have unlimited supplies, so we can't have unlimited demands. And effective demand management is critical for a sustainable future. And we are actively advancing water use efficiency as a community, including awareness and engagement, incentives, and resources. And the results are clear. We are continuing the trend of reduced water use despite an overall increase in population. In fact, we're using the same amount of water today as in 1949. And that's with a 30 to 40% increase in population. And we are delivering big projects for the community as we need to continue to build a reliable and resilient future. One of the largest capital projects is the Sunset Complex project, as you can see in the photo there, a little bit before and after, or existing and future picture right there. The existing reservoir, as you can see on the left, is over 130 years old. It's from the late 1800s, so I like to compare it to like a car. We drove this way past 300,000 miles, and it's time to replace it for improved safety, reliability, and resilience. And this project also includes groundwater treatment and groundwater well improvements for increased local reliability and more. We also need to continue to be diligent about replacing our main lines. As you can see a picture there of a construction of our main lines. The main lines are the backbone of our distribution system. And we're an old city, we're steeped in history, and these pipelines aren't getting any younger. And the consequence of not reinvesting in our system are severe. It reduces reliability and actually costs us more. So we're also continuing to secure water supply and implement smart water management. And we're engaging and working with our community and partners across the region, state, and beyond. And also, by the way, May is Water Awareness Month. So please look out for our wonderful events planned. And overall, coming full circle to our utilities origin, we as a community need to continue to invest in ourselves for continued high level of service and reliability. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our Assistant General Manager of Finance and Administration, Lynn Chamowitz, who has a deep background in water and who will be diving into our water rates. So Lynn?
Ooh, nice pun. Thank you, Stacy. So, before we get started to talk directly about the rate study, we have to know where we are and where we've been to know where we're going. So the Water Fund and the Pasadena community has done an excellent job in being stewards of the Water Fund. And that's reflected in the fact that we are doubly rated as a AAA credit-worthy institution. This is the highest credit rating that a fund can get. So from external validations to ourselves, we know that we've been a well-managed institution, and that is reflected by the credit rating. And one of the reasons that we are rated AAA is two things. One thing is that we are investing in having a diverse supply portfolio. We're making the proper reinvestments in ourselves. And also we're willing to make sure that we have the rates to support the future activities of the water fund and the water system here in Pasadena. The other piece to know is that we have under-collected in revenue for the last year by under $4 million. And a lot of this is really driven by some of the conservation that Stacy has talked about. We've done an excellent job in conserving water and using less, which means that less revenue has come in. So year over year, we used 18% less from fiscal year 22 to fiscal year 23. And you'll see on the bottom right graph here, you're looking at how costs have compared with how we've done rate increases for our water customers in the past. So what you see in the blue bar here is this is the LA region consumer price index. As you can see, the consumer price index has been fairly high, specifically during COVID. So these have accumulated. And what you see in the gray bar is the California construction cost index. So as you know, and as Stacy explained, the water system is a really capital intensive industry. And so the green bars have not been keeping up with the increasing cost levels as reflected by both the consumer cost index as well as the construction cost index. And we have some big projects that are going to be delivered by the water team coming up soon. One of those is the Sunset Project Complex. But as you can see into the future, the investments in the water fund are nearly doubling from the 5 prior years. And all of this we're delivering it to your home, delivery included, for less than 1 cent per gallon. So how are we using and where are we getting the funds? So as we've talked about, we're a nonprofit community utility. So every dollar that we receive, we reinvest back into the system. So of the pieces of the pie, this is for fiscal year 23. These 3 parts of the pie chart are for our customer revenue, our rate revenue. And this other non-operating and miscellaneous revenue is from grants, contributions from customers directly, and other sources of funds that are not ratepayer dollars. And on the expenses side, what I wanted to highlight here is first the purchased water piece. So we have imported water and purchased water, which is 32% of our budget. So that's really the commodity costs of the water that we produce. And the rest is direct operating, administrative in general. And then these net income, depreciation, and amortization, those are all dollars that we have on an annual basis to reinvest in ourselves. So again, to the capital plan, as we saw, the capital plan, there was a bump, but so how does that compare to where we've been? Our average capital spend have been around $17 million per year. And going forward in the next 5 years, the average is $38 million. As we talked about, a lot of that is reinvesting into the mains where there's no way to keep up. The Sunset Project and other huge capital investments, sort of once in a generational investments that need to be made. All that being said, we can't communicate enough what a great deal tap water is and what a value is. So we're going to be using some terms in the presentation that I wanted to go over before we started talking about the details. But for 1 billing unit, or for 100 cubic feet, 1 HCF, that's 748 gallons. So I wanted to credit this photo to our former AGM of Finance, Sherry Thomas, but she provided this to give us a very good visual of what 1 billing unit is. You get all of this, and this gentleman is 6'3", for 1 unit of water. So that's less than 1 cent per gallon. That's a quarter for a 10-minute shower with a low flow shower head. And then also, as that compares to bottled water is 100 times the cost of what tap water is. So why did we do this rate study? Why did we embark on this process in the first place? The first reason is that the water system is a enterprise fund. So that means that it reinvests all of the money back into itself. And there's different regulations, laws, and different pieces that govern an enterprise fund. The rate revenue pays for our operating costs, capital costs, also debt service to pay back prior loans that we've taken out on the water system. And it also reserves, funds reserves. And these reserves are so that we can pay future capital costs because, you know, 1 year is not enough, and there's other risks that we need to hold back and make sure that we have funding available for. And ultimately, rates must keep up with the cost to operate the water system. And we also did the rate study to look at the equity and fairness of the rate structure, who pays for what. You know, one part of the system should not be subsidizing another part of the system. So a rate study is a financial planning process that ultimately sets rates to make sure that we have a financially viable utility system. It can also consider in the rate design process community values such as conservation, affordability, and fairness and equity. And ultimately, it must be legally defensible. So Proposition 218 came about so that you, as customers, would only be charged the cost to serve you. So that's a really important piece of a water fund, is that it has to be legally defensive and the rate structure has to be based on the cost to serve. So the different steps in conducting this rate study specifically, this rate study started by setting the framework in 2022. We decided and went to our municipal services committee and started discussing what are important to us, what are our community objectives, what are our pricing objectives. The next step was an analytical study to look at what are our revenue requirements. The revenue requirements are really just how much money do you need to run the system? How much revenue do you need for the next year to make sure that you're covering all of your expenses and being a prudent manager of your funds? You're evaluating your operating and cash, needs, and you're also making sure that the cash flow is enough for financial sufficiency and financial resiliency in addition to our infrastructure and water resiliency. The step 3 is to look at the cost of service and really start to design the rates, which is the how we are collecting rates from all of our different types of customers. So through the evaluation of the rate design, we thoroughly evaluated 5 different rate designs and presented different options to council and ultimately selected the rate design that is being proposed. We also looked at water use to get to the cost of service and design and pricing of who uses and how much do they use it and how much do they use throughout the years. And we did the rate calculations. We also did the customer impact analysis, which you'll see, as well as cost allocation. And now we are on the final step, which is the public outreach and the public engagement to hear from you about the rates, and as well as the report, which will be published prior to the public hearing. And you should have received in mail your Prop 218 notice that has a detailed table and explanation of all the rates that are presented this evening. So again, it's a confluence of multiple different factors, different inputs to the equation to figure out why rates needed to be adjusted. We've talked about aging infrastructure. We've talked about supply chain driving up the cost of doing business. As we increase all of these factors, that also increases the power cost to pump and deliver water to homes. And then also just the price of water and the extreme swings that we've had in hydrology impacts the price of water. And also Metropolitan Water Agency, which we receive 30% of our water from on any given year. They're also increasing rates. And this all flows into what we have as far as our fixed costs and our variable costs, and ultimately the revenue requirement or the money needed to run the system. So from this, we developed a financial plan. All of the things that go into the financial plan are bound by our financial policies, but you have your revenue, and your expenses. So when we develop the financial plan, it compares the revenue to the expenses, and it assesses how much more is needed through rates for operating and maintenance into the future, capital investment into the future, reserve funding, as well as debt service. So all of this is combined into a multi-year projection and a long-term financial plan for proposed revenue adjustments. So these are the proposed revenue increases. So these are not the rates. These on the bottom, the revenue increases are telling us how much over the prior year more revenue do we need to collect in order to cover all of the needs in our financial plan. What you see here is the minimum operating reserve. This is something that is set by council, and this is the minimum amount that we need to have in fund balance by ordinance in order to meet the needs of the system in case of an emergency. And it's a very low number. It's 60 days of operating expenses. So that would be nothing else, just operating expenses. And the middle red line is really the operating reserve target, which is 6 months of operating reserve. And then the black line is the total reserve target, which is the operating reserve plus the capital investments needed for the next year. So basically, the target is to be somewhere in between the red line and the black line. And so these revenue increases that are proposed are for 13%, 12%, 9%, 8%, and 7% in 2029. These are proposed, and these are the maximum amounts that we're seeking for revenue increases. So all of this is done by a really standard methodology that's developed by the American Water Works Association, and that's a part of the cost of service. And we're just going to briefly go through some of the methodologies and how we got to some of these numbers and the prices. So the first piece is to really look at what revenue requirements you have and then allocate them to, okay, so why are these different costs needed and who do they serve? I think, and how do we collect them? I think customer service is a good example. Customer service, they generate bills every month, and so they require money regardless of how much water you use. Whereas the supply side of things, the more you use, the more we import. So those are the different sort of cost causation categories, and everything is separated out and allocated to each class. So you distribute all these classes to each each of these costs are distributed to the different classifications of customers. And from there, you determine how are you going to develop all these. You put everything into a bucket, and then you develop the different rates for both fixed and volumetric rate. The way that we have our water tier set up, so we have an inclining block rate structure, which means the more you use, the more you pay, but also the price of each tier in each block goes up, or in each tier goes up. So your tier 1 water use was developed to capture mainly indoor use or base use, and that's a lower price than your tier 3, which is all the imported water costs and the cost for the extra capacity in those pipelines. So it gradually goes up, and you have a base demand period, and then you have a peak demand period, and then it goes back to base demand period. So you have all of these cost increases per unit of water. And from there, you get to the rate design process. So the rate design adjustments that are primarily driving the different ways how we collect are on this slide here. The first piece is that we created a customer class. So prior to this study, the rates that are in place right now the rates are based only on meter size. So there was no customer class. So there was the assumption that single family residential customers use water the same way as commercial customers, which through looking through the data, we found that it would be more appropriate to separate into more different customer classes, which is actually more of a standard way of creating different customers and doing a more standard rate structure. So these are all, again, based on data that we found that the distinctive use patterns for each customer. So from there, we developed a different block or tier breakpoints for each customer class. So for the single family customer, these are all monthly billing units for each different block. So the darker blue for each customer class is the first block. So that lower priced tier water is in the dark blue box. And the light blue box is the second tier. And then the gray bar sort of goes up from this minimum amount. So anything for single family residential, for example, anything over 29 billing units per month is going to be charged the third tier pricing. We also decided to simplify our rate structure a little bit as well to simplify it. We went from 3 different rate components to 2 rate components, the fixed charge and the variable charge, to keep them simple. So every customer's formula is basically going to have 3 basic inputs. You're going to have what is your customer class, what is your meter size, which determines the fixed charge, and then how much water do you use, which is the variable charge. The other change that we made and the final change that we're going to talk about is drought rates. So because of drought conditions, we know that there's sometimes mandatory cutbacks, and that prevents us from collecting all the revenue we need to maintain the system. So we developed a set of drought rates that may be enacted based on the different drought level stages from both the governor and also set by city council. So the next thing we're going to talk about is customer bill impacts. And every customer bill impact, like I said, each formula has 3 different components. So not every customer class is going to be impacted the same. And it's also not going to be the same based on how much water you use in your household. So the next set of slides, we're going to go over just some examples. And I encourage everyone to look at the rate calculator to figure out for themselves what their budget might look like with the proposed rates enacted. The first case is sort of the smaller family. This is a family of maybe 2 people, mainly indoor plants, not a lot of outdoor watering, and they use 700 cubic feet per month, or 7 billing units per month. So from this, again, they would have the fixed charge, they would have the variable charge for 7 billing units or 700 cubic feet, and their total bill would be $54.36. So that's an increase of $7.68 or 16.5%. And the small family, just for reference, the small family represents about 30% of total single family customers. So they're in the 30th percentile. The medium family, this family might have a small child, a pet, a dog that drinks a little bit more water, might need a bath more, and then a small garden, and 2 families. So the medium family is about the 47% customers use this much water or less. And their current bill is $64.19. And this bill would go to $78.07, which is a $13.88 increase. And then the second single family customer example would be the large family. So this is a family, maybe a multi-generational family with 2 pets, so maybe a larger garden. So this large family, 74% of single family residential customers use this much or less every billing period. And so their current bill is $123.90 per month. And with the proposed rate changes, it would go to $152.98. And also of note is that these meters are also different sizes as well. So the different meter sizes as they become the large family also makes a difference in the bill impact. The second case is getting to our multifamily customers. So this is it's a multifamily duplex landlord. Both units use 1,700 cubic feet per month. The per unit would be $51.07. But for them, the total bill would increase by $8.72 or 9.3%, going from $93.42 to $102.14. The second is a larger multifamily 20 unit complex. This example, they're using 84 billing units per month. This customer would experience a bill decrease per month of 33.5%. And the majority of this decrease is driven by the 2-inch meter. So we standardized some of the methodology for the 2-inch meter with the American Water Works Association and the maximum flow rates. And so that caused a decrease for some of our multifamily residential customers or customers with a 2-inch meter. The other use case is for a multifamily residential 125 unit apartment landlord, and they would have almost relatively no increase. It would go up by $25.06 or less than 1%. And moving on to our commercial customers. So we have many different types of commercial customers. For this case, it would be an example would be a strip mall with very minimal outdoor watering. They would use 11 billing units or 1,100 cubic feet per month. So their bill would increase by a modest $9.65 or a 15% increase. We have our medium commercial. So this would be maybe a coffee shop that's using a lot of water for their business. So they would have 75 billing units per month and they would experience a decrease. And again, this is someone who has a 2-inch meter that's primarily driving the decrease. And the last case is the user case for a large commercial school. So this customer is using 700 cubic feet per month, and they would experience a decrease of about 1%. So how does this all compare to our neighboring agencies? So surrounding agency bill survey, and the caveat for this is just one point in time. This is a time of year when a lot of different agencies are considering what their rates will need to be for next year and any adjustments that they might need to make. But currently, we are slightly above Glendale, sort of sandwiched in between Glendale and Burbank on the lower end of the spectrum for water rates. And then with these changes, we would be at $78.07 for, so this is like that medium family. So we would still be on the lower end of other surrounding agencies for their water services portion of their bill. So outreach and next steps. So thank you, Jen, so much for talking about the website, the explainer video, and the bill estimator, as well as the community meetings that we're having coming up. And again, the public hearing is going to be on June 3rd, and everyone should have already received their rate hearing notices. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Jen.
Great. Thank you, Lynn, and thank you, Stacy, for super informative presentations. And so now let's move over into our Q&A session. So the way you can ask a question 2 different ways. You could select the raise hand option on your screen, or you can submit a question via the chat. And so while we are waiting for folks to potentially raise their hands here, we did already have some questions submitted through the Q&A, not the chat, excuse me, I'm using the wrong term, through the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So I'll start with the very first question from an anonymous attendee. And Lynn, this one's for you. It actually touches on something that you addressed on the multifamily regarding the rates. But the question is, does anyone's rates go down? If not, why not call it a rate increase?
Yes, that is because it will not be an increase for all customers. So for certain customers, primarily the 2-inch meter customers, it will be a decrease. So it really depends on the variables in the formula to, I'm sorry, I'm being so mathy, but yeah, so it varies by customer and usage.
Great, thank you for that. So our next question is also an anonymous attendee. The attendee says, I ran the estimator and my rate is going up 50%. That's unacceptable. There has to be another way to cut costs and ease the burden on customers. So Lynn or anyone else want to jump in to maybe add some feedback on that?
Yeah, so I think that part of it is we're sorry to hear that you're going through that, and we understand for everyone's budget that honestly every dollar counts. But I think the key points that we're making is that if we don't increase rates now, we would probably have to increase them more later down the line. We're really trying to maximize the value that we bring to our customers by looking at other ways of funding things for the water fund, such as grant funding or issuing debt where we can. But I think it is the unfortunate reality of we've seen increasing costs like so many other industries. And it's just something that we really think we need for the sustainability and resiliency of our system.
Great, thank you for that, Lynn. Our next question is going to be for Stacy. So does Pasadena have its own water treatment system so it can rely less on imported water?
That's a great question, and that goes back to, I think, what I talked about a little bit earlier about our groundwater treatment facilities. We have our Monk Hill treatment facility. We just brought online our Wadsworth groundwater treatment facility, and part of the Sunset Complex project is going to be the treatment facility there as well. So that does exactly that. In times of need, we're able to more rely on our groundwater with these type of facilities and utilize less imported water, particularly during long extended droughts when imported water may not even be available. So I think overall reliability, that's the way to go, and that's what we're doing.
Great, thank you for that, Stacy. Our next question is, will the slides from Stacy and Lynn's presentations be posted to the PWP website? I can certainly jump in and answer that one, and the answer is yes. So over the next several days, we're going to be updating the pwpweb.com/water rate design page. That's going to be sort of your home page for all of the discussions we're having today. So that'll include links to these presentations. It'll have a link to the explainer video, as well as information on the next community meetings and such. And we'll also be updating our social media pages. And if you just happen to forget that link, don't worry about it. You can just go to our regular web page and you'll see some guides that'll point you in the right direction there. So I don't see any raised hands. Otherwise, I'm going to go to the next question. So this one is a combination of sort of a comment and then folds into a question. So this one comes from Karen Sessions. So Ms. Sessions says, incredible stats on usage and costs. Thank you for the data. Question 1 about step 1 and the pricing objectives. You mentioned what is important and community value being a component. As a community resident and a human who can't live without water, I believe that basic water need of residents is the most important factor, far more important than any business need. Why is any business charged less per billing unit than any tier 1 residents? For reference, single family resident tier 1 rate is 2.24 plus, up to 7 billing units. The multifamily tier 1 rate is 2.24 and such, up to 5 billing units, while the CS tier 1 rate is 2.21 and up to 8 billing units. This rate structure makes no sense. You mentioned in the opening comments that you consider fairness, but this doesn't make sense when I need to drink water to live. Please explain.
Thank you. I'm happy to take that if I can. So I think the first thing to acknowledge is that we do have the requirement that our prices are set based on the cost to serve. And from the fairness perspective, it really is that one type of customer should not be subsidizing the use of another type of customer. But I will say too is that the inclining block rate structure is designed so that the lower price tiers are used for sort of the indoor basic needs use for water. But again, we do operate in a really constrained system of what we can do as far as pricing for our tiers and the creation of the rate structure.
Great, thank you for that, Lynn. Our next question is, what is the marginal cost of water purchased from the Metropolitan Water District per billing unit?
I will have to get back on that number exactly. I do not have that calculation.
Okay, not a problem. And for the person that asked this question, you're welcome to direct message us on social media, or you can send an email to pwpcommunications@cityofpasadena.net, and we'll be happy to provide you with that information. So the next question comes from Michael. Michael says, is PWP doing anything to capture more rainwater runoff and use it, preventing valuable water from ending up in the ocean?
I'll take that one happily. Thank you. And the answer is yes, of course. I think that's critically important. Like I said, the groundwater basin is recharged primarily by what falls from the sky. And so that's what we're doing to try to capture more of it. For example, in the Arroyo Seco watershed, as you know, downstream of the Devil's Gate Dam, that mostly goes on concrete channels into the ocean. So we try to capture as much of that as we can. We have a Arroyo Seco Canyon project to further expand our spreading grounds so we can capture more of that water when it's available and recharge our groundwater. We have partnership opportunities with the county of Los Angeles, Department of Public Works, or flood control as well. So we can maybe pump back some of the water ponded behind the dam before it runs off into the ocean, into our spreading grounds. So we're looking at all those types of projects in order to maximize capturing that rainwater while it's here. Now, and with climate change, it's coming in faster in a shorter period of time. And that's why we have to adapt our systems to be able to continue to capture as much as we can to get through the longer and hotter droughts. So those are some of the things that we're doing there. Also, beyond the scope of what we're just doing locally, we're partnering. I showed a little bit of that with our regional partners, the Metropolitan Water District, our fellow member agencies, our neighboring agencies, on what we can do regionally. During the 2023 very wet year, there was water running off from our sources up in Northern California. I think a lot of you saw the flooding that was happening there. And so I think that's a state water project, for example, to me, is one of the biggest stormwater capture projects for beneficial use, I think, in the nation, maybe even the world, where that water, instead of it being wasted to the ocean, for example, is captured, brought down here. We have programs, innovative programs in Metropolitan. We're working on more of that in order to capture that water and put it into our ground locally here too. So beyond just even what we're doing here locally, using our regional partners and capturing that water, making sure we're using as much of it as we can for reliability into the future.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Stacy. It looks like we've got a follow-up question for Lynn about the rates going up versus down. And the question is, if the rate is going down with 2-inch customers, those are not average customers. Those are commercial customers and should be compared in this presentation, especially if they're the only ones that the rate is going down. Why would their rates go down when everyone else is paying more?
The Can you repeat the first part of the question, Jen? I just want to
Sure.
make sure that I answer it.
Yeah, absolutely. Said if the rate is going down with the 2-inch, probably the 2-inch meter customers, those are not average customers. Those are commercial customers and should be compared in this presentation, especially if they are the only ones whose rate is going down. Why would their rates go down when everyone else is paying more?
Yeah, so again, for the fixed charges for the 2-inch customers, that was because there was a sort of calculation of the different meter sizes for the fixed charges. And so those were just brought to a more standard calculation for how much it costs for the flow through the 2-inch meter. And as far as comparing different customers, I think the point I'm trying to make through a lot of these things is that really there is no average customer for, if you're looking for the average, that's not going to be anyone. So I think that's also why we developed the bill estimator, is so people can see, what their usage are and what their bill impact will be. As far as how much additional revenue we need to collect, you're absolutely correct. We do need to collect we need to collect 13% more revenue to continue the operation maintenance, the capital investments, the debt service, as well as making sure that we have enough for future financial resiliency. So that is an overall increase for the revenue requirements. But the actual impact to each individual customer is, again, based on a variety of different factors. And the thing with the 2-inch meter is sort of a factor of, now that we know it, we can't unknow it. And so we're needing to make that adjustment at this point to have it reflect the cost of service.
Great, thank you for that, Lynn. Our next question looks like an operational question, probably for Stacy. What safety measures are there in case of a severe earthquake? This is interesting because when we had the water town hall with Lynn and Stacy in January, it was ironically on the 30-year anniversary of the Northridge quake, and we got a similar question, and this is certainly a very thoughtful question. So I want to toss that over to Stacy to address.
Yeah, again, great question. And I think that's part that goes back into why we need to reinvest in our infrastructure, that we have to be diligent about maintenance and replacement. So what we're doing is also continuing to replace our main lines to make sure that they are durable during an earthquake, and more so the Sunset Complex project, for example, those reservoirs, from the 1800s, they're not to today's standards for earthquake standards by far. Right, so we have to replace those reservoirs. Those are large capital costs, but it's something we need to do for, again, safety and reliability and resiliency into our future. So those reservoir storage, we're also making sure that we have adequate storage in order to get through an earthquake and a type of emergency there. We are also working very closely with our partners. We have emergency management drills, for example, with our partners across the region. We are working with Metropolitan to make sure that their system is resilient, and how do we get backup water if we need to. We're putting in those treatment plants. We're putting in groundwater wells, and we're making sure that, and we're putting in water into our groundwater to make sure that if our lifelines outside our community is severed for a short period of time, that while that is fixed, we have water available here to get through that. So within our groundwater and local supplies and storage.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Stacy. And we had a follow-up comment from the same attendee who asked the question, said, sorry, question is off topic. I would say no, it wasn't off topic. This is a larger conversation about why these types of discussions need to happen, because when we talk about investing in the utility with rates and everything else, we invest that right back into the system, and that infrastructure that Stacy talked about is really a critical part of that. And of course, safety and making sure all of these things stay in place, even in the event of an earthquake, is very critical. So I would say, no, your question is definitely related, and we thank you for that one. So next up is another question from Michael. Michael asks, how about the new development in Pasadena? Does PWP work with developers and builders to create more sustainable development that keeps rainwater on site? So this sounds like it could be a conservation question. I'm thinking maybe Stacy or Ursula might want to answer this one, but there's a lot of activity that we do.
Yes, I think that's a great question, and a great response can be given by Ursula. So I think that's a great segue. Thank you, Ursula.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Ursula Schmidt. I'm the Water Conservation Programs Manager here at PWP. And yes, so new development in Pasadena is under some pretty strict guidelines with the California Green Building Code requirements. And those requirements do require there to be permeability on site. So definitely options for hardscape to be permeable. And for there to be, it's not a requirement to have rainwater capture on site, but we are working with and provide incentives for customers to look at and implement cisterns on site for development so that they can capture rainwater on site. One of the challenges is that a lot of new development in Pasadena, because it's under the Green Building Code guidelines and the Model Water Efficiency Landscape Ordinance requirements, there is minimal sort of green space for those new developments. And if there is, that is already drought tolerant and highly water efficient plantings, which require very little water. So one of the challenges is that there's actually not a high water need for outdoor landscaping on those new developments, especially if we're looking at multifamily and commercial, because the landscapes are all drought tolerant. They have to comply with that. And so there is not an opportunity actually to utilize water that's captured. So I think that's one of the challenges, but we definitely are available and working with and providing incentives to install cisterns if developers so choose to have those on site.
Great, thank you for that answer, Ursula. Thank you very much. And for those who are really interested in some of the incentive programs we have, the capital improvement projects that Stacy referred to, and just generally all things water, earlier in Stacy's presentation, she showed an image of a campaign that just recently launched called The Ripple Effect. So if you go to pwpweb.com/The Ripple Effect, that's a clearinghouse of information that'll take you in any direction you want to go, all things water PWP. So I would encourage folks to visit that website and engage with us. The next question is about wastewater. So the question is, with wastewater treatment processing, how much does that cost? And I know we've got some colleagues from our Public Works Department. I think we've got our director, Tony Olmos. Tony, are you able to unmute yourself and maybe answer this question?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Tony Olmos, the Director of Public Works. I can briefly answer by saying that the City of Pasadena does not treat wastewater. That's treated by the county, the LA County Sanitation District. And the LA County Sanitation District actually bills the residents directly for that cost. So the City of Pasadena does not treat nor charge for that cost.
Great, thank you for that clarification, Tony. Our next question comes from Bill Bangham. He says, annually, how much water will be delivered at the Tier 1 rate? I'm assuming that might be a Lynn question, but I'll toss that out.
Yes, I have my rate staff on the phone. I'm wondering if Elena or Clarence has that information available. If not, we can certainly get back to you with that. We do have that in the model, but yeah.
I think we've modeled about 65% of our demand will be at the Tier 1 rate.
Thank you. And that is Mr. Clarence Ceruno, and he is the Manager of Rates and Analysis.
A little slow on the camera. Sorry about that.
Great. Thank you both. I appreciate it. So our next question is, in the examples you used in the presentation, were they based on 2024 rate adjustments or 2028? The impact is actually much greater over the 4-year time period than may have been presented. Can you share the cost of service estimates over the 4-year projection time period, if not included in your presentation? You mentioned in the initial overview, once in a generation capital expenditure, if that is part of the reason for the rate increases. Will rates reduce after you make those once in a generation capital expenditures?
So we do have the rates notice that you should have received in the mail does have the rates over the full period, the full 5-year rate plan. So those rates are available if you're interested in doing it for a specific usage scenario. So the rates that are shown are based on what your rates are now versus the proposed rates, which will be, if approved, effective July 1st, 2024, which is our fiscal year 25. And I lost my thread. What was the second part of the question, Jen?
It says, based on, were the numbers in the presentation 2024 or 2028? And if these are once in a lifetime capital expenditures, will the rates go down after these expenditures are implemented?
So we have, the current plan does have sort of a gradual flattening out of the rate increases. And those are also the maximum rate increases that we're proposing. And then the second thing that I wanted to mention is that we do have the ability to issue debt. So for our capital program, we are issuing debt to make sure that ratepayers of today aren't paying all of the costs for ratepayers of tomorrow. And that's an ability, because we have such good credit ratings, we are able to go out and issue revenue bonds so that the investments that we're making can sort of be spread out over time through payments like you would through your mortgage. So those costs are being spread out as much as possible as well. And we do plan on issuing around $60 to $65 million worth of debt. And we've also been, we're looking at and will apply for the Water Infrastructure Financing and Investment Act loan, low interest loan program through the federal government that also enables us to start paying that back after construction is complete. So we are looking at ways to sort of spread these one-time generational costs throughout time. So it's not all on the ratepayers of today.
Great, thank you, Lynn. So our next question looks like this one might be for Stacy. Question is, how will water supply increase to meet increased population? Let me try that again. How will water supply increase to meet increased population densification mandated by the state, e.g. RHNA numbers? And RHNA, for those who don't know, stands for the Regional Housing Needs Assessment numbers.
I think that's a great question again, too. There's a couple of things happening right now. Is one, actually, we've seen in the last few years, our population, our service area population actually decrease. So that's one part of it. But even without that, even as population stabilizes, which is what we're looking at into the future as well, you saw that graph of our water conservation. I think that's how we also meet increased population. So like we said, our conservation trends speak for themselves. Last year, for example, we used as much water as we did in 1949, despite a 30 to 40% population increase. So we keep doing what we're doing actually and doubling down on that. 1, 2 would be the portfolio. We need to strengthen and continue to strengthen our portfolio to ensure that we have both supply and storage. So a lot of with climate adaptation, for example, our supplies are at risk as well. You know, we get less water, or we get more water in terms of rain instead of snow. Up north, for example, we have issues on the Colorado River and long-term drought. So what we need to do is to work with our regional partners to maintain those supplies. We also have to put in infrastructure to adapt to the climate, including regional conveyance, including more storage, including more groundwater storage here locally as well. And so those are things that we're working towards to make sure that every component of our portfolio is stronger and that we can be resilient into the future. If we need more supplies, if we need to meet more demands, also if something happens with a portion of our supply that we have right now.
Great, thank you, Stacy. The next question is, has the City Council considered changing the rules that require the cost to serve as the primary or only factor in determining water cost? Please clarify which. Like was stated before, residents need water to live.
Yes, so actually the requirements for cost of service are in the California Constitution. So when California voted in Prop 218, that's where they decided as a state that you needed to have water rates or parcel charges that were uh, based on the cost to serve. So it's not a local decision. It's sort of the legal parameters that we have to operate in as an enterprise fund.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. For our next question, it says, who do I contact for help installing a water flow meter, e.g. flume, to detect sudden pipe leaks? So for that one, I think I see Stacy, you unmuted yourself. I haven't, think it might also be a conservation question, but I'll
Yeah, no,
give you that determination.
I think it would be. So Ursula, if you could answer that as well, about flumes, but then also I think Jen, you mentioned PWP communications at cityofpasadena.net,
Yes.
and you can also reach out that way as well. So Ursula is our water conservation manager, as she mentioned earlier, and please take it away. Thanks.
Thank you. So for the flume device is something that is attached to the water meter, and it's any single family residential property owner that's a water and power water customer can apply for a rebate for the flume device. And so we've had lots of customers in our PWP service territory purchase flume devices and receive a rebate, and then have attached those themselves to their meter. We normally don't go and install it for the customer. We can assist with providing you with some guidance and videos. If you do have the Flume webpage is a great resource. There are video tutorials on that webpage on how to install the Flume leak detection device. And it's an easy installation. So if you still have questions, you can always reach out to myself and Jen. I'll let you provide information on how best to get that question or information back to the customer that's asking the question.
Yes, thank you for that. Absolutely. So there are a number of ways you're absolutely welcome to reach out to us. We've got a couple of those methods on the screen here. If you're subscribed to X, formerly Twitter, or Facebook, you can certainly direct message us. There's also an email that's there, and that does come into the box over here, and we can triage that out. You can also reach out to our Citizen Service Center. That's how they answer questions for the whole city on really any topic. And if we get something regarding our department, they'll funnel that over to us. So the number of ways you could reach out, and either way it reaches us, we're happy to help. So it looks like we have another question here. Oh, I lost my place here. There it is. Okay. So back to billing unit questions. It says, I still don't understand how you can present a proposal that has CL Tier 1 up to 850 billing units at $2.27, while the marginal rate for single-family residents over 29 billing units is greater than $6, and multifamily residents over 10 billing units is greater than $6. How does this meet the cost to serve legal requirement?
Yeah, so it is based on, I showed a couple of slides about the methodology for the cost of service and how you calculate all of that out. And so it's all based on the different methodology. And it is, again, it's really it's a standard methodology that you have to determine the pricing for each of the different rate tiers. And it's based on how much water is used in total, how much are used within those different blocks, and how it's used by each of the different customer classes. So we will have the full report available before the public hearing. So if you're curious, you can look and look at those actual calculations. We do make sure that we're very vigilant about making sure that all the calculations and methodologies are available through the study so customers can see for themselves, because we do think it's very important. But I'm happy to also, if you get in touch with us, I'm happy to walk you through in more detail the process of determining all of those pricings.
Excellent. Thank you, Lynn. So we have a few more questions as we start to come up on our time. This one says, do you anticipate much of an impact from recent regulations concerning Chrome 6?
Great question. Yeah, and Chrome 6 came out, PFAS came out, and some other things with water quality. I think it's in the news. The answer is no. We actually don't anticipate that. We do, of course, monitor all of our water quality, as you know, and but for Chrome 6, we do not expect to be at risk of not meeting the MCL.
Thank you, Stacy. And looks like our final question thus far is, a gallon of water is a gallon of water, no matter who uses it. What is the justification for charging businesses less than residents?
So I think to answer that question too, it's really just we are a water service provider. So we have pipes available for use in case of for fire protection. We have pipes available and we're ready to serve at any point in time too. So a lot of what your actual charged for per gallon is for the service and the availability of having water service to your home. So I think a lot of people do think of just the commodity cost of water, which is true. There's a commodity cost. There was a great question about sort of what's the marginal cost for water, but a lot of what is involved in operating a water system has to do with the infrastructure, the support services, the water quality treatment, all of the different variety of factors that go into delivering that gallon of water to your home. So there's different costs and different availability and readiness to serve. So there's a lot of different components than just really the commodity cost. And all of that needs to be reflected and paid for through the rates in delivering that 1 gallon of water.
Great. Oh, we have another question that just came in from Bill. What is the cost of serving groundwater versus the cost of serving imported water?
That's a great question. Groundwater is less, and there was a chart that I showed too that I maybe didn't go over as clearly, but we do know that groundwater is less expensive for us than imported water. So the costs associated with groundwater are put into that tier 1 costs and sort of the lower priced tiers of water in our rate structure for that volumetric or variable portion of the charges.
Excellent. Thank you, Lynn. And I don't see any more questions in the chat. I don't see anybody with their hands raised. So I think this will be a good time to kind of bring this to a conclusion. So I want to thank our speakers and our city staff, and especially to our community and those who participated tonight with some very thoughtful questions, informative feedback. This is exactly the kind of conversation that we're trying to have. And again, this won't be your only bite at the apple. We have 2 more community meetings that are coming up, and of course, the public hearing in early June. And we encourage you to please, go to pwpweb.com for all information about what we talked about tonight, including other things that are going on with Pasadena Water and Power. And of course, you can stay up to date with PWP's happenings by following us on social media and checking out our website. So with that, thank you very much. And we will be posting the we'll be posting this recording to the website. Thank you very much and have a good night.